Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Edjuenko. We have a really interesting program for you tonight, and perhaps we should issue a warning that persons with a weak heart should not be watching, because we're going to give you some information that perhaps will give you a little scare. We're going to talk about the environment. We're going to do an environmental assessment. We've come to recognize how important the environment is to us, and we are taking steps. We're attempting to take steps to manage the environment, to manage it in a sustainable way. So we're going to do a study. Well, not a study, but we've done some research, and we have some information about where we are environmentally here in the BVI. And my very special guest this evening is Ms. Charlotte McDevitt. She's an industrial administrator, and she's done tremendous research here in the BVI since she's been here about our coral reefs, our water supply, our energy supply, our waste management, and we're going to give you some interesting information about where we are environmentally. So you keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We're going to take a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to get right into it.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'd like to welcome my guest, Charlotte McDevitt. Charlotte, it's good to see you.
Nice, thank you for having me.
You're becoming a regular. And I have to say that Charlotte is the director of Green VI, and she makes gave me my beautiful glasses, and got a lot of nice recycled, beautiful objects, vases, ornaments at Green VI. That's just the name of it is Green VI.
It's Green VI's Glass Studio.
Glass Studio,
and
right.
That's just one of our projects. Yeah, but it's our first build. Yeah,
and it's right opposite Marriott's in King Garden Bay, so you need to go and check it out. It's amazing what is being done there with recycled glass. I understand these used to be Caribbean bottles. Yeah. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
There's a lot we got to talk about, so we're going to get right into it. But I'd like you to first put the environment into a global context and show us what's been happening all over the world, lest we think that we're the only ones with problems. So I'm going to let you go through, that section of what you want to talk about, and then after that we'll go right into the BVI and talk about some of the things that, some of the challenges that we're having here. We're going to talk about solid waste, we're going to talk about water, and we're going to talk about energy. And I don't know, whatever we know about the marine life and the coral and so on, we'll talk about some of that as well. So you want to get right into your slideshow?
I will. So I'm going to take you through a few slides that just show what's happening around the world. And so basically, if you look at the Earth as a system, you'll see if the Earth had to go to the doctor, it's got some symptoms. It's a bit hot, the forests are disappearing, the deserts are spreading, there's lots and lots of waste. Like I said, the forests are disappearing, the animals are becoming extinct at the rate of one of the ice ages. And there's also a lot of inequality between wealthy nations and the poorer nations, and I think the pictures summarize it well.
That's interesting.
But if you look at all of those things, these are all just symptoms. And then the question is, well, what's the cause? And it's quite simple, really, and it's quite sad, but it's us. We are the cause of all these things, and we want lots of things, and we want it, and we want it cheap, and we don't really care where it comes from, or if we need children's labor to get it, or we just want it. And there are more and more of us who want more. So we've forgotten that we have a place in the natural world, because in the natural world everything is in balance. If you go into a forest, there is no waste. Everything becomes food for something else. But we've forgotten that we're part of that system, and we are producing huge amounts of waste, really huge amounts of waste. And in a nutshell, this is what we're doing. We're taking our valuable resources, we make really useful things, but we're leaving a mess behind. And we're starting to hit the wall. We're starting to feel, that this isn't the right thing to do. And I think on islands, you feel it more closely because
It's smaller.
it's smaller. So this is where we can go into some of the issues that could affect the BVI.
Well, you showed a big picture there with a vast amount of waste. I was wondering where that was.
New York.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of that.
Or
waste.
any city's landfill. That's what they look like.
Well, let's talk about the waste, the solid waste and the BVI. Then let's start off with that.
Well, let's.
Yeah. What is the current state of solid waste? I know
Well, one of the things that I found was interesting when I did my research on waste management was the sort of explosion of waste. In '95, you had 10,000 tons of waste per annum, and then 10 years later, you had almost 40,000 tons.
So that's 300% increase in 10 years.
In 10 years. So,
Hallelujah.
and that's just because the population grew, because tourism grew, and because the island became wealthier. So there were more goods coming in. And out of all the countries in the world, the BVI and the USVI are some of the highest waste generators per capita. We produce more waste than most people on the earth because we ship everything in. So not only do we have the packaging of the stuff, but it's also the shipping of all those goods.
And now I understand that we have, over the last several years, we've now up to 55 tons
Yes.
of waste.
55,000 tons per annum.
55,000, yeah, 55, reach 55 tons, right? 55,000 tons of waste.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many landfill sites we have?
Well, this is the problem. Because you're on an island, you don't have landfill space. You just don't have that luxury that a lot of continents do. So in Tortola, for example, we've actually run out of landfill space. There is no landfill space. They've tried to find other sites that would be suitable, and they haven't managed to do that. Jos van Dijk is also, they've run out of landfill space there. Virgin Gorda, they want to shut that landfill down. And Agard has still got some space there, but really, landfill, you don't have much time on these islands, so it's a problem.
So do we have someone that came a few years back to tell us about building landfill?
There was a feasibility study done, I think it was 94? 2000?
2001?
And they said you could build a landfill that would last 5 years, but it would cost about $12 million. It's just because the island is so hilly and you'd need special engineering. But again, you don't have space, so it's not a viable option, which is why incineration was selected.
So incineration a viable option?
I think a good waste management plan where you start managing each waste stream would be a better option.
Well, we had an incinerator, and we just bought another incinerator. Well, how is that working? Are we getting the waste reduced? What's happening with that?
What's happened now that the new incinerator's up is that there's less open burning of waste at Pockwood Pond, which is a good thing. It gets burnt in the incinerator now as opposed to up on the hill.
So what was the burning up on the hill doing? I mean, what was so bad about open burning?
The old incinerator could only handle 40 tons a day, and so whenever they had an excess of that, or if the incinerator was down, they'd have to open burn the incoming waste on the hillside. Now they've got both incinerators going, so there's less open burning of that waste.
Well, what's wrong with the open burning?
It's the emissions that are emitted during that process. You've got really toxic chemicals that are released in that process.
Like what?
You've got dioxins, you've got furans, you've got chemicals that that cause cancers, asthmas, skin problems, birth defects. There's a whole range of things. There's a book called Dying from Dioxins. You can Google it online to find out some of the chemicals involved in the burning process.
So that has been happening, and those toxins been released into the air in our environment.
I'm afraid so.
So are we supposed to know this?
I think everyone does know. I think people know, and they sort of.
Because I mean, I've been noticing, for example, that a lot of us are dying at an earlier age here in the Virgin Islands, and it seems like we have a disproportionate amount deaths from cancer.
Well, you see, now it's interesting because cancer around the world is on the rise, and there are a lot of factors that are people contributing that too. And and essentially what most research is saying is that it's because we are increasing the pollutants in our environment through various ways, including in burning of waste. It's making us sick. We're making ourselves sick by the way that we live right now.
Because I used to think that before I'm hearing this now. I used to think that it was the electric wires, the high tension wires. Because I saw somewhere on television where that was a problem in a state in New York. But now it seems as though the open burning is part of could be part of the problem as well. Okay. Now, so we have a new incinerator. I was hearing something about the dangers of incineration, and especially putting glass in the incinerator. Talk to us about that.
With the incinerators that we have here, they can't handle glass waste. The glass melts onto the inside walls of the machines, and basically they have to shut the machine down. They haven't had to do it with the new incinerator yet, but it's going to happen at some point. And they have to shut it down, let it cool down, and then go chip it off by hand so that it doesn't stop the machine working.
Is that dangerous for the persons who have to do it?
It is, because inside the chambers you've got all your ash, and because there's no separation of the hazardous materials, that ash is full of lead and cadmium and mercury, really toxic materials. So yeah.
So what kind of protective covering the people that do that wear?
The solid waste, they call the waste management department now. They are given masks and safety equipment to wear.
Okay. Now you said that the landfills are filled to capacity.
Tortola's is.
Tortola's is filled to capacity.
Tortola's is.
So is all the waste on top of the ground? How is a landfill constructed?
A sanitary landfill is basically a hole is dug in the ground. Geomembranes then are used which are thick plastic liners, are used to line the hole. Waste is put in it. They have collection systems for the leachate, which is the liquid that comes through a landfill, so that they can collect that so it doesn't go into the groundwater or the soil. They also have methane collectors to collect the gas that's emitted during the decomposition process in a landfill. And then once that landfill is full, then they cap it so that it essentially becomes almost like a tomb, and that's what happens in a sanitary landfill.
So then our landfill is similar to that, and so eventually they're gonna cap it. It has a liner and all that.
No, not really.
Wait a minute, hold it. What do you mean not really?
It's
not built like how you described.
No, it's not. And even if you look at first world countries, it's in the last, depending on the country, the last decade, the last 2 decades, that sanitary landfills have become regulated, and people have begun understanding the implications of poor waste management practices.
So we are dumping the garbage right on the earth. No, there's no liner. It's right in the hole. And you talk about the leachate. what is the leachate?
Leachate is if it rains or if there's liquids in the waste, it's the liquid that seeps through the waste, and it tends to collect the particles and the heavy metals within the waste stream, and it comes out as like a really dark brown sort of liquid that is...
And that goes into the earth? So how possible is that to affect our water supply?
It's a definite problem.
I don't know, you look like you're holding out on me. What do you mean it's a definite problem?
Leachate needs to be managed. It affects the soil around it, it affects water quality if it gets into the water table.
So you're saying that it's possible that the toxins from the garbage in Parkwood Pond is leaking directly into the ground and could be going into our water supply?
It's most likely.
You said most likely. I said
I haven't done the research I don't have the stats.
Data.
I don't have the data.
Okay. You're just saying it stands to reason that if there's no liner and it's there for a while, whatever toxins are in its rain and the liquids that come from the garbage is going to go into the ground, and if there's a water table there, it'll leak into it. Okay, let me tell you. Serious. I'm stunned. Okay. Now, so we don't right now, we don't have any evidence as to whether this is affecting our health. Now we haven't done that research.
There's no data at the moment.
Okay.
There's no data on air emissions or leachate or water quality around waste management sites right now. No.
So what is our waste management department doing? Is that something that they should be managing and taking a look at and investigating and collecting information on and all those things?
I believe so. And if you look at NEAP, for example, which is the National Environmental Action Plan, there it calls for the territory to develop a solid waste management plan, because the country right now doesn't have a plan of how to manage waste, even though the main island has run out of landfill space. There's no plan in writing on how waste must be managed, which is unusual in today's age. So the NEAP also calls for emission standards to be tested to make sure that the incinerators aren't emitting things that they shouldn't be, and water quality tests around landfill sites to make sure that they're not leaching into the surrounding environment. And those things are necessary and they should be done.
So those tests and those investigations need to be done. But when you talk about a waste management plan, what exactly that should look like?
A waste management plan is any system that you have in a country. You have a plan of how you're going to take it forward. There is no plan for the BVI right now. It's usually a policy document.
So it's things like what that we're gonna have a recycling program. What sort of things would be in a plan? I don't know.
Okay, the things that go into a plan is, you decide what sort of waste management plan you're going to have, whether you're going to landfill, whether you're going to incinerate, whether you're going to aim for a zero waste policy and start reducing your waste streams and managing them. The government decides which route they're going to take and how they're going to manage the waste streams in the long term.
So that has not been developed. Okay. Well, is there anything at all we are doing? Who has this information besides you? The government has this information? Anybody knows about what you're talking about here? Or you just keep it everything?
No.
You keep it a secret?
No, I don't believe I am. I believe that the Ministry of Health are moving towards developing a plan, and I know that they're also looking at developing a recycling program for the BVI. So it's good. I think they are starting to move in the right direction.
And what are the solid waste doing in terms of waste management? They just clean up the streets, and are they doing anything to help them mitigate some of these developments? Do they know about these developments that you're talking about?
Yep, they do. I think they're acutely aware, and I think they deal with it every day. And to be honest, I take my hat off to the Waste Management Department. I think they work under, they've had to work under really difficult conditions at Parkwood Pond until the new incinerator. It's much better now that the new incinerator's up. And they've had to work with really limited resources as well. And I think they've done a great job in keeping the island clean, and I think they manage the contracts well. And there's always things that can be done. And I think, I know with the Waste Management Department, they've always helped us as Green BI. If we want to do a recycling program or try something new, they're always there to help us do that.
Now, the waste, you have any information on the waste that doesn't make it into the landfill, like around the communities and so on?
If every year there's an international coastal cleanup. It happens all around the world, and it's actually the Conservation and Fisheries Department. I think it's coming up soon, actually. Where they get groups to go clean up the environment around us. And the highest litter item is plastic. There's plastic everywhere. There's polystyrene containers, there's the spoons, the cups, and Guyana is actually, they've just banned polystyrene products. And these are sort of some of the high-end legislative things that you can bring into place to just get rid of certain waste streams that you don't need, that are just polluting your environment and making you sick in the long run.
About how much, you have a figure on how much garbage is picked up that doesn't make it during the cleanup campaign?
It's the Conservation Fisheries have really good data. I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's all there. If you just speak to Conservation Fisheries, they know exactly how much there is.
Okay. Now, a few, I don't know, not much, it shouldn't be months, maybe a year or more ago, we passed a litter abatement act. And we were supposed to be, enforcing the law. If people were caught littering, they were fined and so on. Has that worked? Is that working?
Do you know, you'd have to follow that up with the Waste Management Department, because I know that there were people who were trained, and then I know that the process was being reviewed. So I'm not quite sure where it's at right now. But the idea was for certain people in the community to be able to give a fine if they saw someone littering.
Okay, so I haven't seen any litter wardens, so I don't know what's happening with that.
The last I heard was that it was under review, so I'm not too sure what's happened since then, but I could certainly find out.
Okay, what can we do? Do you have any pictures to show us about some of the garbage that's around the...
Well, let me show you an image of Parkwood Pond on fire.
Okay. Ooh.
Now, it's those emissions that are really problematic. In fact, even the USVI complained about these emissions. They're the two incinerators. And
Now, you have some pictures about that shows the dumpsters in the neighborhood. I want to see that. Bring up
that's a picture of the glass inside the incinerator. That's what starts clogging up the machine. And literally illegal dumping are common practices here and around the world. But to be honest, I think the Waste Management Department handle it quite well. You don't often see that. It happens sometimes, but not often.
I know that used to happen in Purcell a lot, where the dumpsters go at the corner.
And part of that as well is the Waste Management Department, they do ask people not to put bulky items next to the skips. You're supposed to take that directly to Parkwood Pond yourself. So that contributes to that. But I think, in general, I think these skips are really well managed.
Okay. We're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, before we get into our water situation, we want to talk about what should be done, what can be done regarding our solid waste management, and what kind of practices we should engage in to reduce waste and to have, I don't know if we could have a zero waste policy, but we certainly would like to know what can be done to stem this tide of pollution, because if we don't have any more landfill space on Tortola, we seem to be going to have another way to get rid of the garbage or not produce so much of it. So you keep it locked right here, the Spotlight. We're going to come right back with more of the environmental assessment right after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Bolo's High Tech Printery, Virgin Island Motors, and Clarence Thomas Limited.